Have you ever noticed how revealing your struggles doesn't always bring comfort? It sometimes brings danger. You think you're sharing your heart, showing your humanity. But what if I told you that in the wrong hands, your weakness becomes a weapon? It's like showing someone the path through tall grass, unaware a snake is hiding there. You expect them to walk carefully, but instead, they push you straight into the strike. Or imagine a climber who points out which ledges feel unsteady, trusting others to be cautious, only to be shoved toward them when the mountain gets steep. That's the risk of misplaced trust. The very dangers you reveal can become the traps others use to bring you down. The Stoics warned us, "Guard your speech, for not all who listen are friends." Some will twist your words. Some will quietly rejoice in your pain, and others will use what you reveal to control you, to keep you small. Because while you're busy proving your humanity, the wrong people are busy taking notes. But here's the truth. You don't need to confess your weaknesses to be human. Real strength is not in what you announce, but in what you embody. So how do you protect your dignity without hiding your humanity? Stay until the end, because the last reason will change the way you look at weakness forever. Let's get started. Number 1. Some will use them against you. Let's talk about one of the most dangerous mistakes people make, revealing their weaknesses to the wrong people. On the surface, it feels harmless. Maybe you're venting about something you struggle with, sharing your insecurities, or opening up about challenges you're facing. After all, being vulnerable is human, right? But here's the reality. Not everyone who listens is a friend. Some people aren't listening to support you. They're listening to use what you say later. In the wrong hands, your weakness doesn't just remain a private struggle, it becomes a weapon. Here's the truth. When you reveal too much, you give others ammunition. The colleague who seemed supportive might later bring up your struggles in front of your boss. The friend who pretended to care might gossip about your insecurities to others. Even family members, if they lack maturity, can use your vulnerability to gain leverage in arguments. And the painful part? It's often not obvious at first. These people smile, nod, and appear to empathize. But when the time is right, they twist your words, turning your honesty into a liability. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Seneca once said, "Guard your speech, for not all who listen are friends." It's a reminder that discretion is a form of strength. The Stoics believed in self-control, not just in action, but in speech. Not everything needs to be said. Not every thought, weakness, or fear deserves an audience. When you share too much, you give away pieces of your inner armor, and those who secretly envy or resent you can and will exploit it. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him David, once confided in a coworker about how overwhelmed he felt with his workload. He trusted this colleague, thinking it was safe to be honest. But later, during a team meeting, that same coworker casually mentioned, "Well, David has been struggling to keep up, so maybe we should reconsider," assigning him more responsibility. What was once a private admission turned into a public strike against his competence. David realized too late that what he shared in confidence had been stored as leverage. So how do you protect yourself? First, know your audience. Not everyone has earned the right to hear your vulnerabilities. Test people with small disclosures before sharing anything deep. Second, keep your weaknesses for those who genuinely uplift you. Share your struggles with mentors, trusted friends, or people who have consistently proven loyalty. And finally, practice restraint. The strongest people are not those who bear everything, but those who know what to keep to themselves. At the end of the day, You don't owe anyone access to your weaknesses. Vulnerability in the wrong company becomes a liability. So guard your speech, protect your struggles, and remember, those who are truly on your side will never need your weaknesses to define you. Number 2, they may twist your words. Let's talk about another real danger of revealing your weaknesses, the risk that your words will be twisted. You might share something in honesty, thinking you're opening up to someone trustworthy. But what you say can be reshaped, exaggerated, or completely distorted into something you never meant. A private confession can become public gossip. A moment of vulnerability can turn into a story used against you. And sometimes it's not even outright lies. It's half-truths, carefully manipulated to make you look weak or foolish. Here's the truth. What you share in confidence can easily be reshaped into betrayal. Some people don't repeat what you say with the same tone or intention you had. Instead, they retell it in ways that make you look smaller, weaker, or even ridiculous. They might add a sarcastic twist, leave out the context, or frame your honesty as incompetence. And once your words are out in the world, you can't take them back. The damage is done. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius warned, "Falsehood hides easily within half-truths." That's exactly what happens when people twist your words. They don't always fabricate entire lies. They take a fragment of truth, strip it of its context, and let it carry a new meaning. That makes it harder to defend yourself, because technically you did say those words. But the way they're framed is false. The Stoics remind us that self-control extends to speech. What you say and to whom you say it matters. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Michael, once shared with a co-worker that he sometimes felt overwhelmed balancing his job and family life. He thought he was just being honest, showing his human side. But a week later, he heard through the office grapevine that people were saying, Michael admitted he can't handle the workload. Notice the difference? Michael's private words about balance and stress were twisted into a narrative about weakness and inability. He never said he couldn't handle the job, but the half-truth spread faster than the reality. Suddenly, people began questioning his reliability, all because his words were reshaped. So, how do you protect yourself? First, be selective. Not everyone deserves access to your vulnerabilities. Second, recognize that words live beyond the moment. Once spoken, they can be repeated, twisted, or misunderstood. Choose carefully what you reveal. Third, if you must share, share only with those who have proven they can be trusted with silence. People who truly care about you won't use your honesty as a weapon. They'll hold it in confidence. At the end of the day, honesty is powerful, but in the wrong hands, it's dangerous. What you say in trust can become the very tool used to harm your reputation. That's why the wise are careful. They know not every thought needs to be spoken, and not every weakness needs an audience. Protect your words, protect your peace, and remember, truth without discretion can be turned into falsehood in the mouths of the untrustworthy. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 3, weakness attracts manipulators. Let's talk about one of the biggest dangers of exposing your vulnerabilities. It attracts manipulators. Not everyone who notices your fears wants to help you overcome them. Some people see weakness as an opportunity. They take note of your insecurities, your doubts, or the things that make you uncomfortable, and they use them as levers to control you. Instead of lifting you up, they push down on those very pressure points to keep you small. Here's the truth. Those who seek control will always exploit your fears. If you admit you're afraid of rejection, they'll withhold approval until you bend to their will. If you confess you feel insecure about money, they'll guilt you into financial decisions that benefit them more than you. If you reveal you struggle with confidence, they'll remind you of it every time you try to step forward, making you doubt yourself so that you never outgrow them. What you thought was trust becomes a chain. And slowly you realize they're not encouraging you, they're conditioning you to stay beneath them. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Seneca once said, "The man who blames circumstances has surrendered his power." What does that mean? It means that when you let someone else exploit your weaknesses, you're giving them power over you. You become reactive, not proactive. The Stoics believed in mastering yourself so that no one else could master you. A person who controls their own mind, their own fears, and their own responses cannot be manipulated, because there's no weakness left to exploit. Let me share a story. A young man I know, let's call him Daniel, used to confide in a friend about his struggles with confidence. He thought this friend was supportive, but over time he noticed something strange. Whenever Daniel tried to step up, whether it was applying for a leadership role at work or even speaking up in group settings, his friend would casually say things like, "Are you sure? You've always said public speaking makes you nervous." At first, Daniel thought it was concern, but eventually he realized it wasn't concern at all. It was a subtle way to hold him back. By reminding Daniel of his weakness, his friend was keeping him small, keeping him dependent, keeping him from surpassing him. So how do you protect yourself? First, recognize patterns. If someone always brings up your struggles, even when you're trying to move forward, that's a red flag. Second, control the narrative. Don't give manipulators the fuel they need. Be mindful of what you share, especially with those who haven't earned your trust. And third, build inner strength. The more you face your weaknesses yourself, the less power others have to use them against you. At the end of the day, manipulators thrive on fear, but fear only has power if you let it. When you take ownership of your insecurities, you disarm those who would exploit them. Weakness in the wrong hands becomes control, but in your own hands, it becomes growth. Guard it carefully, master yourself, and remember, the strongest defense against manipulation is inner mastery. Number 4. Not everyone respects vulnerability. Let's talk about another uncomfortable truth. Not everyone sees vulnerability as courage. In fact, some people see it as the exact opposite. While you may think that opening up will earn you trust, compassion, or understanding, there are those who will take your openness as a sign of weakness. Instead of respecting your honesty, they quietly lose respect for you. They begin to see you as less than, as someone who doesn't have it all together, as someone they can step over. Here's the truth. Some people don't honor vulnerability. They exploit it. To them, strength is silence. They equate openness with fragility, and fragility with inferiority. You could be showing immense bravery by sharing your struggles, but in their eyes, you've just admitted defeat. And once they frame you that way, they'll treat you differently. They may dismiss your opinions, doubt your abilities, or simply fail to take you seriously. Vulnerability that was meant to build connection ends up building distance instead. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius said, "He who respects himself will not tolerate the disrespect of others." If your vulnerability is met with disrespect, it's not a reflection of you, it's a reflection of them. The Stoics believed that our worth is not tied to how others perceive us, but how we perceive ourselves. Respect starts with self-respect. If you value yourself, you won't allow others to diminish you just because you chose to share a truth. But equally, wisdom means choosing carefully where you place your openness so that it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Jessica, was in a demanding workplace. One day she confided to a colleague that she sometimes felt anxious about balancing deadlines with her personal life. She thought it would help to be honest, maybe even relatable. But afterward, she noticed a subtle change. That colleague began treating her as if she was less capable, questioning her input in meetings, even making comments like, "Are you sure you can handle this?" Jessica's vulnerability, instead of bringing understanding, lowered her standing in that person's eyes. What she meant as openness was wrongly perceived as weakness. So how do you navigate this? First, remember that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Vulnerability is powerful, but it must be shared wisely. Second, respect yourself enough to notice when someone no longer respects you. If your honesty shifts their perception of you, that says more about them than it does about you. And third, protect your dignity by reserving vulnerability for people who can handle it with care. True allies will see your courage, not your weakness. At the end of the day, vulnerability is not the problem. The wrong audience is. Some people will always misinterpret openness as fragility, but the wise learn to guard their inner world and choose their confidants carefully. Respect yourself, and you'll never have to tolerate those who mistake your courage for weakness. If you've watched the video this far, don't forget to leave a comment with a "thank God" and give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 5. Envious people will secretly rejoice. Let's talk about one of the darkest truths about revealing your weaknesses. When envy is present, your struggles become someone else's quiet satisfaction. Not everyone around you wants to see you succeed. Some people smile at your face, but deep down, they are unsettled by your achievements. And when you finally reveal a weakness, when you admit a struggle, when you falter even slightly, they feel relief. What hurts you makes them feel stronger. What sets you back gives them comfort, because for once, you are not ahead of them. Here's the truth. Revealing too much feeds the hidden satisfaction of the envious. They thrive on comparison. Your progress makes them restless, but your difficulties soothe them. They may not show it outright. They may even pretend to console you, saying things like, "Don't worry, we all go through this," or "It happens to the best of us." But beneath the surface, they are quietly rejoicing. Your weakness validates their insecurities. It reassures them that you're not untouchable, that you too can stumble, and that somehow this levels the playing field. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Seneca once said, "The envious are pained by the success of others." If envy causes them pain when you rise, then naturally your weakness brings them relief. The Stoics understood that envy is never about the person being envied. It's about the inner emptiness of the envious. But that emptiness can be dangerous because it doesn't just make them uncomfortable with your success. It makes them quietly satisfied with your struggles. And that is why your weaknesses should never be casually exposed. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Robert, was thriving in his career. He had a close circle of colleagues, or so he thought. One day, during a stressful project, he confided in a co-worker that he felt burned out and wasn't sure he could maintain the pace. The co-worker nodded, offered fake encouragement, but weeks later, Robert overheard that same co-worker saying to others, "He's not as sharp as people think. he's been struggling to keep up. The truth was, Robert was still performing well, but that one moment of honesty had been twisted into proof of his decline. And the co-worker, who had always been slightly envious, seemed almost glad to spread the story. So, how do you protect yourself? First, recognize envy early. If someone can't celebrate your victories wholeheartedly, be very cautious about sharing your vulnerabilities with them. Second, guard your personal struggles. Not everyone deserves to know what keeps you up at night. And third, channel your weaknesses into private growth. Work on them quietly, so that when you emerge stronger, the envious are left with nothing to feed on. At the end of the day, envy is a silent poison. When you reveal your weaknesses to envious people, you hand them exactly what they crave, a reason to feel superior, even if only for a moment. Protect your peace by keeping your struggles away from those who secretly hope to see you fall. Share them only with those who uplift, never with those who quietly rejoice in your pain. Number 6. True friends don't need proof of your struggles. Let's talk about a truth that often gets overlooked. The right people don't need every detail of your pain to support you. In fact, true friends don't measure their loyalty by how much of your weakness you expose. They stand with you whether you share every burden or keep most of it to yourself. They don't demand proof of your struggles in order to care. They simply care because that's who they are. Here's the truth. The wrong people demand details, but the right people don't need them. Manipulators, gossipers, or shallow acquaintances will often press for the specifics of your hardships, not because they want to help, but because they want information. They feed on details to satisfy curiosity or to use later. But real friends don't interrogate you. They don't push you to relive your pain in order to validate your worthiness of their support. Instead, they offer presence, not pressure. They create safety without conditions. This is where Stoic wisdom gives us clarity. Seneca once said, "Associate with those who make you better." The people worth keeping close are not the ones who dig into your wounds, but the ones who strengthen you without needing to see them. The Stoics valued companionship rooted in virtue, uplifting one another, guiding each other toward wisdom, and never exploiting vulnerability for personal gain. A true friend, in Stoic terms, doesn't just share in your difficulties, they help you rise above them. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Anthony, went through a tough financial period. He didn't want to share the details with everyone, but his best friend, Mark, noticed something was wrong. Instead of asking invasive questions, Mark simply said, "I don't need to know the whole story. Just tell me how I can help." That one line revealed everything about their friendship. Mark's loyalty didn't depend on the details of Anthony's weakness. It depended on his commitment as a friend. Compare that with others Anthony knew who kept prying with questions like, "What happened? How much debt are you in? Why didn't you plan better?" Those weren't offers of support. They were subtle judgments wrapped in curiosity. And Anthony realized quickly who his true allies were. So, how do you apply this? First, observe who makes you feel safe even in silence. Those are your people. Second, stop confusing curiosity with care. Real care doesn't need to extract your pain. It seeks to ease it. Third, measure relationships by their actions, not their appetite for information. The ones who uplift you without conditions are the ones you can trust. At the end of the day, true friendship doesn't demand exposure, it offers support. The right people will stand beside you without needing a full explanation. They won't require you to hand over your weaknesses to prove your trust. They'll make you stronger simply by being in your corner. So choose wisely. Keep those who make you better and release those who only want to see you broken. Number 7. Strength is best revealed, not announced. Let's talk about one of the most important lessons when it comes to guarding your weaknesses. Strength is something you reveal through action, not through endless words or confessions. You don't have to hide your humanity. You don't have to pretend you never feel doubt, fear, or pain. But what you must protect, always, is your dignity. There's a difference between being human and being careless with your vulnerabilities. The strongest people are not those who tell the world how strong they are. They're the ones who quietly show it through the way they live, the way they handle adversity, and the way they rise despite challenges. Here's the truth. Actions define you far more than confessions ever will. Anyone can talk about their battles, their struggles, or their strength, but only actions prove it. When you live with composure, when you respond with discipline instead of chaos, when you carry yourself with integrity even when life tests you, that is when your strength shines. The moment you start announcing it, explaining it, or oversharing, you risk diluting it. Dignity doesn't need constant justification, it needs embodiment. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one, stop telling the world who you are, and simply live it." The Stoics didn't waste energy in long speeches about their virtues. They let their discipline, restraint, and composure do the talking. In the same way, you don't need to confess your every fear or explain your every weakness. Instead, focus on cultivating inner mastery. The more you embody strength, the less you need to declare it. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him James, went through a painful divorce. Many expected him to crumble. Some even waited to see him collapse. But James didn't broadcast his suffering. He didn't share every painful detail with anyone who asked. Instead, he channeled his energy into his children, his work, and his health. Over time, people began to notice, not because he told them, but because his actions revealed it. He wasn't pretending that life hadn't hurt him. He simply refused to let his pain define him. And in doing so, his quiet strength commanded more respect than any confession ever could. So, how do you live this out? First, practice restraint. You don't have to give everyone access to your inner world. Second, embody strength through your choices. Let how you act in adversity prove your character. And third, protect your dignity above all else. Being human doesn't mean being exposed. It means knowing when to share and when to simply rise. At the end of the day, strength is not in the telling, it's in the being. You don't need to announce that you're strong. You don't need to prove your worth with endless explanations. Protect your humanity, guard your dignity, and let your actions speak louder than any confession ever could. That is how the Stoics lived, and that is how true strength is revealed. If you believe this video can help others, give it a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show it to more people. And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content coming your way. Share your thoughts in the comments. I will definitely reply.